This is Terry Lewis. I'm here with my friend Jim Carlson at the home of Jack and Katie Rindfleisch. And it is 19 July 2008. And we're here to talk to Jack and Katie about their experiences during the war, World War II. This is divided up into 4 different categories. The first will be Jack's personal war journey. The second will be more about his war experience in general. The third are some personal reflections about his experience. And then finally, we'll get Katie involved and find out what she had to do with the war effort. So first, Jack, where were you in the fall of 1939 when Germany invaded Poland?
I was in high school in Reedsburg, Wisconsin, which is a small town up this way.
Did you or your family have any sense that this was going to lead to something really big? Or was this just something happening in Europe?
No. Realized it was very important that something was really happening. I didn't know that it was going to involve me later.
Where were you when Japan bombed Pearl Harbor?
Same place in Reedsburg, and I remember my aunt and uncle heard it over the radio first and called and told us.
Did you have a sense at that point that this might involve you now instead of just Germany invading Poland?
Well, it flitted across my mind, but I was, I guess, still in high school, more interested in sports than I was.
Okay, under what circumstances did you end up in the armed services, and in particular the Army Infantry?
Well, when I was a senior, I wrote an exam for what they called Army Specialized Training Corps. And I was accepted, and so when I was drafted about a month before I graduated, and I wrote him a letter saying that I was going to graduate on June 4th, and I'd like to be, delayed induction until after that. Well, they took me at my word. I graduated at 9 o'clock on the night of June 4th and left at 5:30 the next morning.
And what year was this?
This was 1943.
43, okay. So you were drafted.
I was drafted.
And you were how old? 18?
18.
Do you remember your dog tag number?
Yeah, 356. Geez, I should remember. 3566. No, I can't.
It's
right
someplace.
It's
It's someplace back there.
Because it wasn't long ago that I could recite it.
You remember your division number?
Oh, the division was 104th. Yeah.
You remember your regiment?
Yeah. It was the 415th.
How about your battalion?
Well, it was the 1st Battalion.
1st Battalion.
Yeah.
Company?
B.
And platoon?
Was the 2nd platoon. 2nd platoon, I'll take it back.
After you were drafted, where did you go to basic training?
Fort Hood, Texas.
How long was that training, and what do you remember most about those weeks?
It was 13 weeks, and what I remember most about it is when we got there, we didn't have the equipment that we were supposed to have, and it was well over 100 degrees, and they sent us out on a march, and some guys didn't even have helmet liners, and so a number of them passed out from the heat, and one of them died. Yeah, and there was an investigation of it, and I think a couple of I think the company commander and one or two of the platoon leaders were court-martialed.
Was this the first time? Move the whole thing closer so we can be able to hear. I think he's talking a little bit lightly.
Okay.
Was this the first time you'd ever left home
Yeah,
for any period of time?
basically, yes.
Yeah, just get a little closer. It's not a very good mic. Where did you go and what did you do after basic training was completed?
Then this ASTP that I'd written the test for, even though it was a basic training, these were ASTP training battalions. So I was sent, we were all sent to various universities to undergo college training. I was sent to New York, to NYU. And this thing was set up so you were supposed to get 2 years, 4-year college education in 2 years. But after 6 months, why, part of it was disbanded. And that's when we went to the 104th.
Do you know why it was disbanded?
All of it wasn't. There was a medical area that was, and I think there was a language area that wasn't disbanded, but I was in the engineering area and that was disbanded. Why, I don't know.
So what did you do when you were sent to the 104th? Where were you sent then?
To Camp Carson.
And that's in Colorado. And what did you do in Camp Carson?
Well, when we first got there, we kind of redid training. Your dad was our platoon leader. He was in charge of the training of all these, because the ASTP came from a lot of different universities.
So all the guys that you trained with were part of this
ASTP. Right. Yeah. When we joined the 104th, so it was kind of an indoctrination training, and so.
Because my dad, when I talked to him about you guys, I asked him about his training, and he said that these guys that came into Fort Carson were all really smart because they were all out of the university.
Yeah.
So it didn't take them very long how to figure out to use a gun and how to take a gun apart. So in a lot of ways he said it was a lot easier because most of the people he had were out of the university already and pretty bright.
Yeah, that's probably true. It also meant that some of the guys that had been in there resented us too. You know, they weren't real happy with educated guys. But that all resolved itself. You know.
So the Army told you one thing and it ended up something different.
Because two of my best friends were guys that had been there and had never gone to school and so on. But so it all kind of resolved itself.
What did you do after you left Fort Carson then?
Went overseas.
So when did you get your orders to ship overseas?
It was in July, I think, July or August. The whole 104th went. You know.
And that's 44, so this is after D-Day.
Oh yeah, this was after D-Day.
And what rank were you when you shipped out?
Private.
Did you feel like you were adequately trained to be in warfare at the time you shipped out?
We were especially trained, I'm sure your dad told you this, to fight at night. Terry Allen came back to, had been the division commander of the 1st Division, in North Africa, and came back because he thought that you could save a lot of lives by fighting at night. Nobody had up to that point. So a lot of our training was done at night. And so we, yeah, I was satisfied with it. Not ever having been in combat, why, it's, as far as I was concerned, it was adequate.
How did you get to Europe, and how long did it take?
On ship, I don't know, I can't remember, 9 or 10 days, I think.
Where did you land in Europe?
At, on one of the beaches. I don't think it was Omaha. I think it was Utah Beach, and but you know it had gone on. They were fighting inland by the time we got.
So Utah Beach was all cleaned up,
there.
and
Well, wasn't cleaned up. There was still a lot of stuff there. But
what do you remember most about the 10-day trip on a boat?
I I probably shouldn't say this, but when after I'd been on the boat a couple days, I got into a red dog game. Red dog is a form of poker, and you. You want me to explain what red?
Well, yeah, this is your time. Tell us what we
red
need to know.
dog is you're dealt 4 cards, and then you get another card, and then you bet on your 4 cards, and you get another card to match that, and if one of the cards in your hand beats the card that they turn up, you win. But because the pot can keep growing. So you bet what you think your hand's worth, and if you think you've got a pat hand with all extremely high cards, why then you might bet the pot. If you happen to lose, you got to match the pot, and I was in this red dog game, and that red dog game went on for probably 6 or 7 days, and sleeping, and at one time I think I was $1,500 ahead. I borrowed $10 to get into the red dog game from a friend of mine who still comes to the reunions, BB,
Yeah.
Al, and I paid him back, but I got off the boat broke. So.
What did your unit do after you landed in France?
Well, first we I don't know, we just bivouacked there for a while, and then they sent us to guard they called the Red Dog highways. Those are the supply lines for the to the front, and we were guarding those Red Dog highways, and split into small units. I think even less than a platoon, squads.
Now, when you say bivouacked, what does that mean? You were living in tents with food?
Right,
and
living in tents, yeah.
So how many people lived in a tent? Were these huge? Two tents.
2, yeah.
Then after you did that, when did you get sent to first engage the enemy? Or where did you get sent?
Into Holland. We went into Holland. That's where we were. First went into combat was Holland.
Can you describe your first engagement with the German army?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it was at night, and you didn't know what you were doing, didn't recognize any of your surroundings or anything, and then the Germans, and then we ran into Germans, and they opened up on us, and the thing I remember more than anything else was 1 or 2 guys that were in the front were hit, and they kept calling for medics. And I really don't know what happened. Somehow or other, why we got either the Germans retreated, or your dad would know more about what happened than I did, because I was just a buck private and didn't have any, you know. But somehow or other, we got into a woods and dug in. And I remember that, but
By digging in, you mean you dug a foxhole?
dug foxholes, right?
Do you remember what your unit's first orders were? What was the first thing you were told to do as a buck private in the middle of a forest in Holland?
Just go, you know, follow the the leader. That's it. There was no specific orders for me to do anything. Later on, yeah, then I got a lot of specific orders, but
Now, when it was followed later, would that be a staff sergeant, or would that be a second lieutenant,
well,
or
I
any
think
of the above?
You were kind of on your own. You were in a group, you know. You were spread out, but you were in a group. It was your, and I don't remember whether our platoon or our squad that I was in was assigned anything. I can't remember anything.
Okay. The 104th, and you talked about this with me when I was here earlier, the 104th was engaged in almost 200 consecutive days of battle. I'd kind of like to know, get some idea of, as you were in that, in different circumstances, what went on during those days. For example, what was it like moving through the countryside?
Well, in Holland, why you were out in the open most of the time on the countryside. Later on, when we got into Germany, that you kind of fought from town to town. We smartened up, and did a lot of things different. As I remember in Holland, one night I crawled into a haystack. You always wanted to protect yourself somehow or other. So I crawled into a haystack and went to sleep. When I woke up, the unit was gone. I had to run and find them. And, but it was anyhow. The circumstances were different no matter where you were. That was all.
Did you spend a lot of time behind field hedges and going tree to tree, or were you walking around in the fields or on roads most of the time?
Yeah. You were most of the time you were following a path or a road of some kind. Yeah, you were when you were moving from one place to another. As I said later on, when you moved, when you were under fire, that was all at night. When we fought from town to town, you went in after dark. But in Holland, why, yeah, you just kind of follow the road, unless you were on patrol, and then you were sneaking.
Did your unit liberate any towns in Holland?
Not that I can remember. There may have been one just before the river crossing. I don't know. It wasn't our outfit that did it. It might have been one of the other companies or one of the other divisions or regiments.
Which river crossing was that?
That's the Ruhr, not the Ruhr.
In Holland.
In Holland.
That's where you ran into the side of a retreating German army?
Well, I guess that was it. I don't know. That was the. Geez, why can't I remember the name of the river?
Well, I can't remember either because that's where my dad got shot. I
That's
remember
where,
that.
yeah, he got shot there. Jesus, I thought I'd never forget it.
It'll come to me too, probably. Did you? Were you
Well,
there?
It'll come to me, huh?
Were you there when my dad got shot?
Well, I was at the river crossing. I wasn't there when he got shot. I didn't know he'd been shot until I got back later.
Were you did you get involved in house to house fighting in towns?
Yeah,
In Germany?
Yeah, oh yeah.
What was that like?
Well, it was, again, it depended on the circumstances. Sometimes you just could, go from house to house and clear it if there was anybody in it. It's
Anybody in it as in German soldiers or just
yeah,
anybody in it?
yeah, German soldiers. We didn't run into civilians till later, not later. Yeah, that's the way. And if there was Germans the other shoulders, then other buildings, then you'd have a firefight, to clear the building, or you'd bring up tanks, and they'd shoot the windows out wherever they were firing from. But in Holland, there wasn't any of that. We were only in Holland a fairly short time.
How did you get your orders? Who gave you your orders?
Usually, the squad leader, and because I was just in a squad, so the squad leader got their orders from the platoon leader, your dad.
So how many men are in a squad?
12.
And how many were those guys that come to your reunion? Were any of those guys in your squad?
Yeah, well, at one time some of them was. Mike
From California.
from California was in our squad for a while, but squads changed.
Oh, they did. Okay.
Yeah, well, we lost a hell of a lot of people at the Mark
River. Yeah.
Mark River crossing. I couldn't. We lost a lot of people at the Mark River crossing, and I went from being a buck private to a staff sergeant and a squad leader. Almost overnight.
Can you give me a couple of examples of a task that your unit, especially after you became a squad leader, because then you were getting information directly from a lieutenant,
Right.
that your squad was assigned to do? Can you just think of a couple?
Oh, well, yeah. Anytime there was an attack, you were assigned you were assigned something to do, either that or there were 3 squads in a platoon. 2 of the squads would usually be on an attack, and the other one would be in reserve. And you'd have, particularly in Germany, when you went from town to town, you would be assigned a building to take, and that would be the CP for your squad. And
CP?
the command post.
Oh, okay.
And so you'd take that, and then sometimes you were assigned to take other houses along there, or maybe that would come later as part of your battle plan that you'd be doing, So.
During combat, how often did you get the kinds of things we take for granted, like food, clothing, ammunition? How did you get those kinds of things?
Well, if you were in a rest, the kitchen would come up and you'd get, well, you wouldn't get hot meals. They had what they called sea rations, which were cans, and and there were pork and beans and stuff like that. You'd get one of those cans and open it and eat that. Or you had K rations. K rations came in a box, and you carried those in your pack, and that's what you'd eat, for breakfast, and you could carry 6 or 7 of those in your pack.
How
But
often
for the
did you
most
get to
part-
change clothes?
Not very often. You didn't carry extra clothes with you. Socks. That was about it.
So did you change clothes once a month?
Sometimes.
Or maybe
Sometimes.
not?
Yeah, sometimes. Or you'd wash them. You could always use your helmet to wash some clothes out, and so on. But
How did you get ammunition?
well, they made sure that we had ammunition. They'd come around and issue you ammunition.
So whatever you could carry is what you had.
But basically, that was it. When you're in combat, yes, that's what you.
What weapons did you carry?
Well, initially I had an M1. I didn't like the M1. It was it's automatic, but if you got any mud or dirt or anything in it, the thing would stick. So then I had a carbine, which is a small, that's a 30 caliber. Well, the M1's a 30 caliber too, but it was a lot more powerful, And then in Germany, I wound up with a submachine gun. That's what I carried the rest of the war.
How often did you get to sleep?
Well, as often as you thought you could. That, if you mean, did you get regular night's sleep? No, you didn't. And because there was something always happening. Sometimes you'd go to sleep, and then somebody'd come in and say, there's something happening, a tank approaching, or something like that. Or I don't know, or they'd hear something, and so it was sporadic. Your sleeping was sporadic.
Did you sleep mostly in foxholes, or did you find barns and deserted houses?
In Holland, yeah, slept in foxholes, and the foxhole would fill with water, so it was miserable. But because their water table is just under the surface, and but other than that, no. In Germany, you usually found a bed of some kind that you could sleep in because you were in a house.
And these were all deserted houses.
Yeah, they were all deserted then. Yeah.
Was there food?
There were no. Oh yeah.
Food left behind,
Oh, yeah.
and alcohol and wine, and
that's what was the first thing you'd do is look for food. Well, at first you'd look for alcohol, and then you'd look for some food, and sometimes you'd find food, sometimes you wouldn't.
Did you ever get formally sent back from the lines for what's referred to as R&R?
Oh yeah.
Where did you go, and what did you do?
I went to Paris.
That's the where. Does Katie have to leave the room to get to the what, or do you want to take the
Did a little
fifth?
shopping and bought some perfume from my mother. But
Did it have anything to do with alcohol and women? Let's just say.
Sightseeing. Didn't do much.
So how long? What was a typical R&R?
3 days.
3 days. And you would go back on a transport truck or something?
Yeah. yeah, that's exactly how you go on a transport. An
What was
Army truck?
what was the frequency of these things? Would it mind like every month, every 6 months, every?
I don't know. That's the only one I ever had.
Oh, so you only had one.
I only had one. Yeah.
I'm surprised you can remember anything about it.
Yeah.
Were you wounded during your combat time?
Yeah, just in the hand.
Can you describe the circumstances surrounding it?
Yeah. Yes, I can. It was after we'd crossed the Rhine. We'd
So you're in Germany now.
We're in Germany, and the 9th Division had taken the Remagen Bridge, and so we were supposed to. The division was supposed to go in reserve, and and when the 9th Division they canceled the reserve, and we all boarded trucks and went down across the bridge. By that time, the bridge was unsafe, so but they put in, the engineers had put in a pontoon bridge so you could. So we went across and then attack. Well, we call it Machine Gun Ridge. That was just the name because there were a bunch of Germans in foxholes and not pillboxes, but you know some kind of, and they covered this ridge with machine gun fire, and but we got because it was all at night, and we were a hell of a lot better at fighting than the Germans were, and so the minute a machine gun, somebody would throw a grenade, or they'd throw 4 or 5 grenades, and the Germans would, you know, beat it the hell up the next one. Anyhow, we took the ridge, and there were 4 houses up on right on the top of this ridge. It came up that way, and it went down on the German side, and there were tanks down there, so I don't know who radioed back or anything, but anyhow, the artillery, they needed an FO, and a captain came up, a forward observer, that's what.
Okay.
And he and I went up, he took me with him, he wanted me up there, and he would do he was looking, you know, through binoculars and everything at what was happening, and I was on the radio and radioing back the coordinates and so on where he wanted, you know, to drop. And somebody yelled at me from downstairs, "Hey Sarge, come down here." So I started down, and it was a banister. You had to make a turn, and as I made the turn, I had my hand on the ball, the banister, and Germans put an 88 right through the window, and of course killed the captain immediately, and a bunch of stuff blew, and my hand got cut. Some stuff got cut, and I thought it was just plaster from from the building, and went down. And they bandaged my hand up, and we bandaged it up. One of the guys in my squad, and that was it. But then a couple weeks later, my hand must have been a week or so, my hand swelled way up. His fingers were like balloons. I couldn't get the colds in my hand. So I went back to the aid station, and the doctor there did some lancing, cut it, put a bunch of medication on it, and said, he says, there's some shrapnel in your hand. Well, he took the shrapnel out, and I never thought any more about it. And then about a month later, the company commander, Greeno was his name, called me in, and there was another guy standing there with a red cross on his, and Greeno says, Rindfleisch, don't you ever call home for Christ's sake, or don't you ever write home? And I said, well, yeah, when I have time and so on. Anyhow, and then he introduced me to this guy who was from the Red Cross, and apparently this doctor had turned in the shrapnel, and I was wounded in a Purple Heart, and they sent the Purple Heart home. I hadn't written or said anything, so my folks get a Purple Heart in the mail, and they didn't have it, so they contacted the Red Cross, and the guy came to find out what was. Anyhow, that was a story I was starting to tell you.
Yeah. So you already mentioned that you had a field promotion pretty early on.
Yeah.
My dad said he was only in combat 6 days when he got wounded, and he was wounded at the Mark. So
Yeah.
after you became staff sergeant, how did your responsibilities change?
Oh, considerably, and you were in charge. You had 12 men that you had to take care of, and then if there was going to be an attack, why you were one of them that was in on a battle plan and what you had to do and so on.
As an 18-year-old kid, did you feel you were at all prepared?
I think by that time I was 19.
As a 19-year-old kid, did you feel at all prepared to be a staff sergeant, or was that
Yeah,
just
I did.
something that
As
happened?
a matter of fact, I'd been in combat for a while, so I wasn't as dumb as I was the first few days, because those first few days I was dumb. The first day I could have been killed a couple times because I was so stupid.
Just not getting out of the way, or not?
Well, a guy named Briggs from California, and I dug in a foxhole too, and then I noticed that there were little flashes of light, going on around me, and I couldn't figure it out. And then finally it dawned on me that somebody was shooting, and those were, and then the Germans started. So we were dug into a woods, and the Germans started using mortars. You could hear them, the mortar come and then explode, and it got closer and closer, and we knew that we were going to get it. And one of them did hit, and it hit right on the parapet of Briggs and my hole. But it all went up, and instead of coming into the hole, threw sand and dirt all over us. But
Now, what's a parapet of a hole?
well, that's where all the dirt goes when you dig a
okay.
foxhole.
Okay.
And that, but later on, I was a lot smarter than that. So.
And then when the war ended, you were still staff sergeant. That was
Yeah,
your final
right,
promotion.
right.
Where were you when Germany surrendered?
I don't know. We were on a small stream someplace. And uh, couple things. This is an aside, but we weren't getting anything to eat, and one of the guys says, "Why don't we get some fish?" I said, "Geez, we don't have any hooks or anything to get fish with." He says, "Don't worry about it." And he went. He got a nitro block, touched it off, threw it in the stream. Of course, it exploded. All these fish floated to the top, and we had fish. You know. But the Germans were on the other side of this stream, or at least we thought they were. Anyhow, I took a patrol across the stream, and we were going down an alleyway, sneaking along, and there were some soldiers out in the street with fires, building bonfires, and we thought they were Germans, so I think there were about 6 of us was all. I think there were only 3 or 4 of these. So we got up close to them and yelled "Kamerad," with surrender. Well, they weren't Germans; they were Russians.
Oh, really?
But we didn't know that, at the time, and so. They didn't talk English, we didn't talk Russian, but it was obvious. They were glad to see us, and we were hugging each other, and that was about it.
So then how'd you find out Germany surrendered?
Well, it happened just a little. I think it happened that same day, as a matter of fact. That's why we took the patrol out to find out. If there were Germans that didn't know that the war was over.
So how long did you stay in Europe after the Germans surrendered?
Not too long. We were we were stationed in a town. I don't even know what town it was, and then eventually shipped back to what they called Camp Lucky Strike, which was on ocean, and it was on the way back to the U.S. And this Lucky Strike we were at for a week or two, because we formed some baseball teams, softball teams, and played, ball.
So when you came back to the United States, where did you go after you got back?
Well, we had 30-day recuperation. They called it recuperation furloughs, and I was home. And when I was home when Harry Truman dropped, when they dropped the atom bomb on Japan. I was in Reedsburg at that time.
So when did you get discharged from the Army then?
On November 11th, on Armistice Day of 1945.
What did you do after you were discharged?
Home, back to Reedsburg.
Do you remember the reception you got when you came home?
Yeah, I got as far as Madison, and on a railroad train, and I was buying a ticket to go to Reedsburg on the train. And so you had to change trains, and somebody said Jack, and I recognized my dad, and I turned around and it was my dad, my mother, and my aunt. They'd come as far as Madison because Dad worked for the post office, and he knew, you know, what I'd be doing, how I'd be getting to Reedsburg, so they came to Madison and got me.
Okay, that's the end of the first section. Let's take a break.
Leader and me found it. So we poured some, and he took a swig and spit it out, and about the same time I was taking a swig, and my throat locked up. I couldn't swallow, and it locked up. Well, come to find out, it wasn't booze at all. It was
Formaldehyde.
formaldehyde. Exactly. That's exactly what it was. And that kind of took. But then later, in Cologne, that's where your dad was wounded the second time, and we wound up on the right next to the river in a little park, and so my squad went exploring, and they found a basement that had a lot of biscuits. They weren't army biscuits. They were biscuits the Germans ate, you know, and about 15 cases of champagne. So we survived for a while on biscuits and champagne, you know, and
Okay, the next section we're going